thumbs up and wait 15 seconds.
They held my car.
I'm gonna have it outside for them, that's what we're just gonna do.
Oh, good. Good. Less thing to do. All right, well, good evening, everyone. Today is Thursday, January 23rd, 2014. It's 7 o'clock, and this is the Board of Selectmen's meeting. First up on our agenda is an update on the proposed changes to the Minuteman Regional High School Agreement. Ed, come on down.
Thank you. Just briefly, as you know, Don's been a significant contributing member to our Regional Amendment Agreement Subcommittee that's been meeting for more than a year. And this is the third time's been the charm. We've been working on this agreement for 4 years. And as you know, the regional agreement as it exists is about 45 years old and is not considered a friendly agreement when it comes to a number of different issues. So I've provided just a one-page comparison, point-by-point comparison, and there's some extras for any folks who are looking. This was voted on by the school committee last week, I believe, and it will be, we just received from the attorneys the final red line version, which I've sent to Don, and a warrant article will appear on all the 16 current member communities for this change. One of the measures that I think we have something that'll pass is everyone is equally dissatisfied for different reasons.
So this is good.
So it's good. Yeah.
It's the art of compromise.
It all depends where you sit, what
Right.
part of this you like, what part you don't. But generally, there are 7 issues. The first 2 here, assessment of annual operating costs and capital costs. Well, we're going to be using a 4-year rolling average for both. The capital costs right now are assessed solely based on enrollment. The new formula recognizes that everyone has a 1% equal share. 50, then enrollment would count for half. So if you add 16 plus 50, that's 66. So the remaining 34% would be divided among the communities based upon what the Department of Ed calculates as an ability to pay factor. So it's part of the Chapter 78 formula already, so we didn't want to invent something. We wanted to use something that exists. School committee weighted voting would be initiated for everything except the incurring of debt, where the committee voted to have 2/3 of the communities have to approve that. So 11 of the 16 would have to approve any debt
At the school committee level.
at the school committee level before it went to the towns for approval. There was a lot of discussion over the years about the membership of the district. And I've said for couple years that I don't believe the district as it's currently structured with the towns that are in it is sustainable for the long term. About 45% of our enrollment comes from outside the district, and it's been that way for 30 years. So we looked at how we might restructure the agreement to incentivize new members joining, including cities. So the agreement gives the school committee the opportunity to negotiate a transitional period of time for a new community to come into the district and transition into its full capital liability, but for no more than 4 years. Withdrawal of members. Right now, in order to withdraw from the district, all 16 have to approve it. In the new, 3/4 of the existing members would have to approve it, so that would be 12. Out of the 16 would have to approve someone leaving. And there would be a transition out, and during that transition, students would still have full access to applications and such. So the students are held harmless through this. If the withdrawal was properly pursued following a district-wide election, and that district-wide election had a town that didn't approve a debt, this agreement is very friendly, that it allows that town to leave if it didn't approve that debt, even though the whole district may have, as an aggregate vote. We have a stabilization fund, and we're also working on, and have had approval to charge non-member communities a facility fee. The Department of Ed has tentatively approved that. So we speak to that amount of money, or that source of funds, as being dedicated to reducing the bond issue. So it can't be used for anything else.
That facility fee is a major new innovation.
Yes, that developed over the last year, based on a lot of work by the committee, by the MARS folks, the Mass Association of Regional Schools, who we hired as consultants, and 6 or 7 meetings with the Department of Ed. And I've heard recently the Department of Ed has been meeting with the MSBA about this factus too. And so I think we're going to have a unified support from both of those agencies around this facility fee, which solves a huge problem.
Right, it does, it does.
So this evens up the out-of-district students with their share, kind of their share of the capital?
Yes.
Okay.
We haven't had an approval of a formula for calculating that yet. We're going to do something very simple, which is to probably on a district-wide basis figure out what the average cost is for every current member and apply that to the facility fee. So everyone's paying equally. But again, new members coming in, the school committee may negotiate with them, so that it would take 2, 3, or even 4 years at the most for them to be a full member in any new debt.
Great.
And the authorization of debt is, right now we have available to us 2 methods to authorize debt. That's not going to change in the new agreement. What the new agreement does is say that we will go to the towns first to authorize debt and seek 100% of our membership to approve it as an initial step. That's under 16D of Chapter 71. Requires currently a unanimous vote in our current agreement. And if one town just says no, the whole, the project goes down in flames, and then 16N is invoked, which means that you could do an aggregate vote. So all of the voters, the district would have to pay for an election with a ballot, one ballot vote, all held the same day, the same time, and the aggregate of that, a simple majority aggregate vote of all the members of all the communities who come and vote, would authorize the district, if it passed, would authorize the district to borrow the funds. And then if a particular town wasn't happy with that vote for whatever reason, you can go back to the withdrawal clause now, and they could withdraw and not be on the hook for that debt. So it's a pretty bold couple of things in here to, and of course the commissioner has to approve this amendment, which I believe he will. But as this is worked out, the commissioner would have to approve any town leaving. He has to approve new towns coming in. So we've had to make a lot of adjustments in some of our compromises already, based upon what the commissioner and Department of Ed has told us. So.
And there was quite a meeting after Desi weighed in with their comments, so we had to regroup again and have one last meeting to try to deal with that. And that was what the school committee just voted on last week.
No, looks good. Looks good.
So we appreciate your interest in this, and I just can't say enough about Don's help and support. Speaking for a large section of my district, which are smaller communities, he had a great perspective and offered a lot of compromise that was accepted by the whole group. And I'm going to use him as he's available to go help me explain this. There might be a few dinners in there.
I must have a few hours in the week that aren't filled.
So that's any questions or?
No, that looks good. Looks good. Thank you.
So
Covered a lot of things.
to affect this amendment, do all the towns have to approve this? Okay.
Yep. So I'm hoping, there are a couple tiny towns, send 1 or 2 students that are looking at getting out. It maybe makes sense for them to do that. Wouldn't have a big impact on the rest of the communities.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure they understand they have to pass it first in order to get out.
Because currently we're still operating under the existing agreement, which requires unanimity.
Right.
And the other point that I have to remind folks of, if this does pass in this town meeting season, it becomes effective July 1.
Oh, good, good.
So some of these rolling assessments and, you know, are gonna help everybody right away. The other issues around enrollment and the intergovernmental agreement, that's gonna take at least a year to implement because of the issues surrounding the admissions policy, how students have access, and our admissions policy, once we're fully approved with this, has to catch up with this agreement. And as I said, you know, we want to hold students and families harmless from making any choices whatsoever.
Right.
In terms of coming to Minuteman.
Dave?
Yeah, is there any significant amount of debt outstanding if a town withdrew right now? What kind of debt would they take with them when they withdrew, or continue to be responsible?
Correct me if I'm wrong, what we negotiated, the issue there was, well, what's the value of the assets? And then what is the debt? Well, we have a debt of, I think about $4 million that was associated with the ESCO project a few years back. But we also, the issue of OPEB liability and the liabilities to our retirees, because Minuteman has its own retirement issue. We sort of put those all up in one column and then put up what the town of Lexington has valued the property at, and they were just about equal. Equal enough for the committee to agree that it would be a wash. But any debt that's incurred beyond that, there would be a payment plan for that community who withdrew to repay that. Am I
think that
couching that correctly? Yeah.
No.
It was a big discussion.
One glitch in the withdrawal process could be that the withdrawal could occur unless disapproved by a majority of other towns. Right?
Yeah,
So if we wanted to withdraw and 9 of the other towns voted that we couldn't withdraw, then we couldn't, is that right?
It would be a majority of the remaining towns, so it would be 15 towns, so that would be 8
Okay.
that said no.
Would they say no by a town meeting vote, or how would?
Yes.
Okay. So, and they would have to vote to disapprove, they couldn't just?
No, non-disapproval would, in other words, if a town X decided to get out of the district, they would do the proper notifications. The rest of the remaining communities could hold a town meeting and say no.
Okay.
Their silence would infer approval.
Right. And what is the time frame they have to express that disapproval after a town?
60 days.
60 days. So they'd have to call probably a special town meeting
Yes,
to do the disapproval unless
yes.
somebody decided to withdraw on April 30th or something.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
And to Dave's point, the other way to get out though is wait for a debt vote and vote against it and hope everybody else votes for it.
That's, that strategy was made transparent.
Well, no, they could still disapprove your withdrawing, couldn't they?
They could if it was a big town. The other members may. We looked at all different scenarios. And the bottom line for withdrawal, though, is the commissioner has to approve it. So in the commissioner's approval process, he hasn't laid out, but we know one of the major questions that he would ask and would need a vote, assurances, is what are you going to do in that town to provide your students with access to career and technical education?
And one of the things that we discussed was a small town sending 5 kids. It's really not logical that people are going to complain about withdrawing. An Arlington that sends a large percentage of the kids, even if somehow a majority of the towns approved it, probably the commissioner would never approve it because of the impact to the district.
Yeah, the idea that we could just send them to another vocational school in this region of the state is not realistic
Well,
because...
we could send them to Minuteman as out-of-district tuition students.
Yes, and pay the facility fee, which could end up being about the same.
It would be about the same without having the vote.
Yes.
Without having any seat at the table.
And is the step that the commissioner has to approve first, or that after the whole process is done, when does the commissioner express his approval?
I would imagine he would do it within the 60 days that the town made that vote.
So probably the commissioner's opinion would come before other towns would vote to disapprove of the
Yes.
withdrawal.
We would hope.
Yeah.
But the way if it comes during a regular town meeting season, which begins the end of March and goes to the end of June, if there's, I'm asking like we're having a municipal breakfast on the 16th or 13th of February. And I'm going to encourage towns that are thinking about it to just kind of be upfront about that. Let's talk to the commissioner now. There's no need to not do that.
So the timing of the commissioner's involvement is still a little uncertain. There aren't rules by when the commissioner...
Yeah. Okay. You'd have to ask him, I guess.
No, great, thank you very much.
Yeah, no, it seems like a lot of thought was put into these amendments.
I think
Yeah,
the
it's
facility
pretty
goes a
exciting.
long way to
Yeah.
equalizing things out.
Yeah, we'll
Yeah.
have that in place, in line, before town meeting season starts. Because I'm sure at town meeting, it's a related question that'll come up.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Don, appreciate it.
Pleasure.
Thank you. Thanks, stay warm.
Doing our best. Thanks, Linda. Okay, next up is a request to hold a 5K race on Saturday, June 14th, 2014. Come on down.
I can send it to you. So last year we held the Bolton 5K rally for Boston, and that was immediately after the marathon bombing. And the idea was to raise money for the White family and for the One Fund, and we were very successful with that event. And at that event, a number of townspeople approached us individually and collectively and said it would be great if this could be an annual event. That it was great in bringing the community together, etc. So we decided that we would like to try to do that. We've identified June 14th as a date that we would like to have it for this year. We haven't yet identified a specific charity. We're doing some community outreach in terms of determining what we're raising money for. Could be create a Bolton community chest, such as Stowe and Concord have. It could be anything. We have obtained the approval of the police chief to have it. We're going to use the same, or we'd like to use the same route that we had last year. So that starts at the high school, goes up Green Road to about the Spilio's house, so right after Bear Hill, and then back again, so it just loops around. I don't know yet whether it's going to be morning or afternoon. Last year's event was in the afternoon. We'd really rather do morning.
Very hot.
Yeah,
I don't understand how the route is uphill both ways.
there's a trick to that.
It's to and from school, so it's
So far we've obtained the approval of Tanya, who's the athletic director at the high school, and we have, believe it or not, there's a tool called School Dude, through which you process any requests to use the school. Okay. We're about halfway through that approval process. I think it's 5 or 6 steps, and we're already past step 3 at this point. So we're seeking approval. Did you have any questions?
No? Sounds good to me.
No, sounds good. I move that we approve the request to hold a 5K race on Green Road from the high school on Saturday, June 14th, 2014.
second.
Further discussion?
Awesome.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Now you're good.
Yay! Thank you very much.
Have a good night.
Thanks. All right, next up on the agenda is an update on Drake Petroleum Company, Inc. regarding the reopening and operation of the existing gas station at 460 Main Street. Hi, come on down.
So I sent this out late this afternoon from Conservation. I
Yep.
just wanted you to have a copy of it.
So the background on this obviously is that the folks have taken over management of the mobile station, and just trying to narrow down, there's been a lot of interest in what exactly the business will be doing, so we thought it would be best to have them come in and meet with the board. Make sure that everyone's on the same page.
My name is Ron Fortune. I'm an authorized agent for Drake Petroleum. And with me is Carol, who's the rep basically for the area. That's
Yep, and the side.
You know, before you start, can I ask you, is Jim Hearn still associated with Drake?
Yes.
You know, I just want to disclose, this just clicked for me, but he was a client of mine 14 years ago. I don't think I talked to him since then, and I'll file a disclosure with the town clerk, and it was unrelated to the business of Drake. It was a litigation his family was involved with, in which I was representing him. But so I'm going to file disclosure on that. That will not at all affect my consideration of this, but I just wanted to disclose that. Sorry.
And he's got the form right here.
Yeah, I'll fill it out while you're talking.
Basically, the Drake Petroleum is a long-term tenant of this property since '97. And then they subleased it to BZ Enterprises. And as of the first of the year, they left the premises, and Drake has cleaned up the site and is operating the islands as full serve as they were in the past. The attendant area and then an area of expansion of retail into the Bay Area is what was questioned as to whether or not this was allowed or had it been approved in the past for basically snack items. The building is roughly 1,600 square feet. There's no, at this point, no reason to change anything. What we're doing is operating the facility as under the Drake name. If we can release it, we will attempt to do that. But for right now, is a company what's called a company operated facility. What we would like to do is know that we can legally operate basically this is 100 square feet, and this attendant area, which is right here, that I'm talking about, the attendant area in this area, and then this additional bay area has tile on it and then uprights in it. And we want to know that we can operate that legally for the retail portion of this facility. Now, we have with the Board of Health, we have a cigarette permit.
Cigarette license permit from the town and from the state.
And then the general vendor's license, I guess, is what's in question at this point, whether or not that was actually an approved area.
And if you have any questions for the building official, he's here this evening also, in case you didn't notice. So, but one of the concerns that I had when I reviewed the application originally was, the comments were that it would be the same as what was there before. I think we were slightly unclear as to what was there before. And also, when it started listing the types of things that would be sold, when I see words like miscellaneous and et cetera, that's not definitive. So I just wanted to make sure that we were all on the same page as to what exactly is being offered in there, along with whether or not they can actually use that area that's in question.
So is that area has it historically been used?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, there are uprights in there now.
Yeah.
There's cold machines, that sort of thing, yes. It was a tiled area.
The young man over here wants to say.
Mike Saljo, the building official for the town.
Yes.
I've gone to the station several times, and the last time that I went there, well, the last two times that I went to the station, there was a gentleman cleaning up the bay areas that you see, and there is that attendant area that's very recognizable when you first walk in. What I did notice, it was questioned what was allowed back when it was originally built, and then, because I don't have the history of that, and the other issue was, are you allowed to, and what was existing at the time relative, as Don said, to the letter, was very unclear. Well, what are you selling, and hey, what have you sold in the past? There were 3 coolers, looked like one long one and a couple of short uprights, adjacent to the tile area. There was 2 racks that next to the, when you first walk in, you'd be looking right at them. Looks like it was for snacks and things of that nature. Another rack to the side of that, just near the coolers. And in the back of the attendant area where the cash register would go, there was a rack that looked like it may have been for cigarettes in the past. So there was evidence that this had been done in the past, and judging on the age of the units and the good condition, but the condition of the shelves, and the fact that you can see that the tile was put there specifically for the the units that have bottled soda, apparently. They have no product whatsoever being sold there at the present time, so they've kind of abided by our wishes until we get this on the right track.
And Don, I know you had some, the vittler's license doesn't seem to apply, that it's more of a...
No, the common victualler's license does not apply in their case. They would not have to apply for one.
Okay.
So is it the opinion that what they were selling there prior to Drake taking control is something that Drake is able to continue?
Yes, I believe it is.
Okay.
That's what's hoped.
Okay.
Excuse me.
As long as there's no further expansion of...
That's right, they have to remain within the same footprint that they've been operating under, which is what they've said their plan is.
Okay.
What is novelty ice cream products? There's some...
Yeah, it's like novelty ice cream is like popsicles, pints and smaller.
Oh, okay. I see.
Good humor bars.
Okay, gotcha.
Well, actually, these days Ben and Jerry.
It's been a long time since you had an ice cream. Any other questions, gentlemen? I know, just... Yes.
Jane Hood, and I'm from the Country Cupboard, 476 Main Street. And I just want to question the fact that I remember when Drake was there with the previous owners and they asked for an auxiliary business to the gas station. And it was granted, being that gas stations now, it's common for them to sell cigarettes and soda and novelty items. However, since they had asked for that, and it was at a Board of Health meeting, they were told limited things. And in the past years, I don't think anyone has policed it to see the expansion that has gone on. So the fact that they expanded over those unpoliced years, does that qualify them to continue with that unpoliced expansion? I mean, there is also signs saying Extra Mart. Extra Mart is not a gas station. Extra Mart is a full convenience store. And it said Extra Mart coming soon, apply. So I would like an explanation of that.
Well, I think the area that the previous tenants had for the auxiliary business is what is being limited to now. So I don't think this, the notion of an illegal expansion, I don't think is an accurate term.
In the attended area, but I think it kind of was an illegal expansion into the bays. I really don't think they had permission for that back then.
I can answer that.
Mike?
Yeah, as I mentioned, thank you. As I mentioned earlier, what I witnessed there and what's probably been going on there for many years before I became the building official has been going on there for many years. So, one common problem that towns have and cities have is that people do expand. And they do it because it's just the logical thing to do. Sometimes they don't realize they need permits if they're going to expand, unless we kind of catch it as they want to remodel. We're kind of catching that. So, we don't have evidence of what was approved when that was originally approved for as a gasoline service station, which generally, as you said, has accessory items in it, even if you're not an Extra Mart. Chapter 48 of the Zoning Act protects certain types of uses and businesses. Now, when it comes to a permit or a special permit or something that's relative to zoning, what happens is, if you got a permit to do it, like a building permit from the building official, or you got a permit from the selectmen that required that permit, they were the authority to give that permit, or the planning board, on the zoning board. If you go forward and you expand what you were allowed to do, after a certain number of years, I know in the building permits, and I believe it's also in special permits, for zoning issues, it's protected, because I guess we didn't do anything for too many years, so that's probably why the regulation's there. Now that they want to make an Extra Mart, we kind of all know that, you know, the gas stations have the cigarettes. It's common for them to sell them even before I said, you know, there was ever an Extra Mart. Now that they want to do an Extra Mart, they need to expand, and they're going to be different. So what they required is a site plan review from the Board of Selectmen to make sure that the traffic fits for the retail use that may in the future get expanded. Right now, obviously, we know they're asking for permission to maintain what they believe they've always been doing. I can say this, if anyone was to go there and take a look at the racks and take a look at the tile and take a look at the age of the coolers, as few as they have in a limited area, or as they mentioned around the tile area, they've been there for a long time. So we're catching it now. They're going to follow the proper program to do it. But the answer to the question is, I don't know 100%, but I can tell you for a building permit and other types of permits, if they got it from the duly authorized authority in the town that gives it, like the building official gives a building permit, and they go above and beyond it, and even in some cases, if somebody finishes off their basement without a building permit, I've read things where that's protected after so many years. So there's probably some protection for what's there. There'll be a heck of a fight to try to prove there was or it wasn't.
Which is why it's really important to baseline this now, and then if they do have plans for expansion in the future, we know from where they're starting and where they would need to be expanding.
Exactly. And unfortunately, people don't think, other than the Historical Commission, they don't think to take pictures. Historical Commission's taking pictures of a lot of properties in town. Maybe we should be out there taking pictures of all the businesses too. You know, you don't want to invade on people and go excessive, but at the same time, this is the problem. This is the problem that occurs when time lapses. But they will be up for site plan approval and special permit planning board if they want to expand, and you as an abutter or any citizen is welcome to that.
And just to be clear, you're not here tonight to ask for that additional expansion.
No, we understand. All we're trying to do is make sure that if we go ahead, or that we want to go ahead with what was used before, I want to have permission to do that under Drake Patrol.
Okay.
On the Board of Health, I vaguely remember this coming up, and I think it was approved at one point, but, I mean, I'd have to go back
Well, the
quite a few
tobacco
years.
license was.
Well, no, but I think that expansion area was brought up as an issue at one point, and I think it was approved. But I'd have to, I mean, it's
That was a long time.
been a few years, yeah.
I vaguely recall that as well. That was a long time ago.
Yeah.
Martha, you had a question?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Martha Remington, I live at 447 Main Road. I have coexisted with the gas station now for nearly 35 years. The gas station was built as a 3-bay service station with an attendance area. When I moved here in 1979, it had a cigarette machine, a candy dispenser machine. It sold some automotive products like oil and whatever were appropriate then. It's a pre-existing non-conforming business, and the expansion to the bay nearest to the attendant area was approved. They went into the novelty ice cream things, and then they had more candy bars and things with no dispenser. They put in the coolers for the drinks, which are now multiple, not just one. They got an ATM machine. I don't know who approved that. They had a Keno operation. Now they have a new sign that's not really permitted, that just advertises the Easy Pass. You know, when you go in, you flash your key and you can get your pump to pump. It's a paper sign there on the pole where the phone booth used to be. And also, Sam's uncle had put in a St. Vincent de Paul drop box there, which I didn't make an issue over. It's white in the winter, and it's been relocated from time to time. My main concern is that the restrooms are working and the septic is okay at this place. I do think it's unfortunate that with the country cupboard right next door, they have been able to expand into a lot of other sales items. I mean, I think it should be pretty bare bones. The extra items that are sold mean there are more deliveries trucks there, there are soft drink trucks there, there are the candy bar trucks and the ice cream trucks and whatever have to go in. It is a small lot near a very dangerous intersection. I guess that's about it. I just also want to mention there is a litigation that has been in place for that station with regard to a canopy appeal that was approved and then challenged by the neighbors. That has still not been dealt with. It's about 14 years old. So there won't be any canopies going up there until that at least is resolved. Thank you.
I forgot about that one.
Yeah.
Would the board like to have a vote on the record that they're confirming that these folks are entitled to use that area?
And do you want to address it or go over the conservation comments before we do that, or address it afterwards?
Whatever the pleasure of the board is.
Well, I think this is for the Conservation Commission to deal with, and I mean, I think we can make our approval contingent upon all of this being dealt with.
That's fine.
Yeah. I'm sure you're aware of some things that that were part of the operational and maintenance plan for the station.
I was there working on that intent, so whether...
President of the creation?
Yeah. And so if I could get a copy of this memorandum, so I can get it back to Drake to follow through it.
Yeah, no, Concom made a point that while a lot of this has been done, that there were few gaps in the prior subtenants activities.
Right. I mean, nothing egregious.
Yeah, and it's not clear if they did the work and just didn't follow up with the paperwork to the town, or if they didn't do the work, didn't do the maintenance,
So, obviously, it's nothing major, but, just to make sure that, so.
Excuse me, before you, can I just say one more thing?
Sure.
I just want everyone to take into consideration the auxiliary business with a gas station being the convenience store. But if you also have to make the point that nowadays, every convenience store has Dunkin' Donuts. And that's not an auxiliary acceptable business. So, what could come next? So just be aware that it just doesn't go a few things, it goes further, so. Thank
Yes,
you.
Martha.
Along that vein, I would like to see, I'm happy the new tenants are there, and I think the gas station is a convenience for me as well as the people here in Bolton. It's our only station now. But if they want to get an ATM or Keno or anything, which before I do not believe was permitted, it just was set up, I think that should be reviewed.
Well, I agree.
They don't require approval for an ATM.
No approval?
No.
Well, if they don't require it, then if there's something that we have to, go through and approve, but if there are some things that we have no control over.
Well, I mean, these just sort of came on over the last decade, the
They actually don't
ATM
require
and the
approval
Keno.
for
You know, for the Keno.
Well, Don's saying that they don't need approval for an ATM or Keno, so that we
Well,
have
if
no
it has signs that are on in the window, we do have signage, things that need to be approved.
If the signs
These
are up on the
extra
inside of the
signs,
building, they can put them up.
But they're lighted.
They can do
They
that.
can do this.
On the inside of the building, they can do that.
Well, I think it's a pre-existing business. This shouldn't be assumed that these can do everything that a building code in business zone would do. I think that there's always been more control by the selectmen over this pre-existing non-conforming business than just any business doing business.
Pre-existing non-conforming has to deal a lot with zoning, not necessarily what may go on inside the building, like an ATM machine or a Keno business or a lighted sign inside a window.
But in the past, excuse me, in the past, these have always been reviewed before, whether
Well-
it's signage or expansion, and ATM and Keno and all that are expansion of what that has been. They at least need a common courtesy to let the town know they're planning on getting this.
That's fine, but we have no jurisdiction or control over that.
I think pre-existing we do.
Well, let's ask the expert.
I don't know if I'm an expert, but I'll give you my opinion.
Because you know what happens when we all assume.
Yeah, right, right, that's the problem. pre-existing non-conforming, if that gas station was there prior to zoning being in effect, or prior to zoning that prohibited gas stations, then that would be an amendment to the bylaw, then that would be considered a pre-existing non-conforming use. If the lot doesn't meet the lot requirements of today, but it's substandard, but it existed before you could create that size lot, then the lot gets, some lots are pre-existing non-conforming with no structures on them. They can be as small as 5,000 square feet of lot area and 50 feet of frontage. And that's an approvable lot if it wasn't held in common ownership with any abutting lot, and it was created prior to zoning being in effect to certain dates. So the pre-existing non-conforming thing we can look at, the simple answer to that would be, what was the date in which that was built, which there should be something in the building file. So I can look up the date in which it was built. I can establish as the zoning officer if it's pre-existing non-conforming or not. Whether it's pre-existing non-conforming, or whether it's just the expansion alone because it's retail wholly within the building, that requires a special permit from the planning board under the bylaw. If it's pre-existing non-conforming, it will also require an approval of that expansion of that use by the zoning, generally the zoning board of appeals under chapter 48. In addition to that, the selectmen have to do a site plan review on it and determine if the site is proper for that use expansion through their site plan review, which looks at the traffic, looks at the, are you increasing lighting, are you selling anything outside, what are you expanding, how does our parking relate to retail as opposed to open garage? Maybe you only need 2 spaces for the bays for visitors, and maybe for retail you need 7. So they will review that. So there will be, regardless of if it's pre-existing non-conforming, or if it's just a legitimate business that was permitted at the time, expanded a little and we didn't catch it, and now they're coming in to expand, guaranteed, no matter what it is, it will be heard and it does need to be
But
approved.
expansion is expansion of the footprint, it's not expansion of the product offerings. There's a difference, there's a big difference between what you mean by expansion. If they go from 100 square feet to 150 square feet, that's an expansion. If they do something different within their 100 square feet, they decide to offer a different product, that's not an expansion.
That would be an expansion of the use. The other one would be an expansion of the structure, and those are handled in 48, the zoning act, separately. So any expansion of, I mean, you could get really nitpicky that the ATM, although it didn't need to be permitted through the town for licensing, like Keno goes straight from the state, there's a possibility, unless there's an exemption in the law, that they would need the approval to expand to put Keno in. That's how limited, I mean, it can get very, very fine. So I believe that the expansion, we can get an opinion.
Right, but if we were to go that way, you'd say we shouldn't have allowed the subway to come into Country Cupboard.
Right.
Even though it was the same space and it was just replacing the
But yeah, but it was
the video.
But it was a used area. So
It was a used area, but you could argue that it was a different use. So
I see where you're going.
Yeah.
I see where it's going. You're on
I
that
think that
note,
would be a
you're right.
ridiculously fine point to make, Mike, to be honest with you.
No, I think you bring up a good point that the space is already being used.
Right.
Yeah.
But
That's right, Don, you're right. It is.
Subway
I'm thinking it's empty.
was
Yeah, it was being
There's a
used.
big difference between what you do within approved space and
Subway
expanding
was
the...
No,
changed
you're right.
use.
It's
And
been
we had
used.
to go
It's
through
not an expansion of the
everything
use.
with DEP
Yeah.
and town well, and we had to be public water supply because it was change of use.
But you didn't get a special permit from the planning board for that new
For the
activity.
inside.
Right, right.
Which supports what Don is saying, that they're already using the garage as a whole.
That's right.
So the expansion of the use in that case would be the footprint of the building.
It's
and that's an
exactly the
expansion
same
of the use.
thing.
Yeah,
And also,
exactly.
that is another pre-existing, non-conforming operation. So they always come to the town before they can do anything.
I am pretty sure the previous tenant came to the selectmen and talked to us about the Keno operation.
No, there was, well,
This
there
might
was,
have
there
been
was,
even before
there
we
was
were here.
discussion about it, but it was only because we got a letter from the state as an FYI that they were eligible for it.
Right, but I think he came in and we talked about it. I agree, we didn't have to approve it.
Right, he did come in and talk.
But to Martha's point of, you shouldn't do these things without letting the town know. In that instance, I believe he let the town know, even though maybe he didn't have to.
Well, he did because we asked him to come.
Yeah.
Right,
We got the notice from the state, we asked him to come and talk about
right,
it.
and he did. Right.
So the poll came from the town.
I move that we approve the request of Drake Petroleum Company, Inc. to reopen and continue the sales of prepackaged snack items such as chips, pastries, candy, novelty ice cream, drinks, bottled sodas, water, that has been in use at 460 Main Street for the last several years.
Second.
Any further discussion?
Contingent on the,
Yes, contingent on a satisfactory review of the memorandum by the Conservation Commission and the operational and maintenance plan.
I'm not gonna let Dave amend my motion.
I wasn't amending it, I was just suggesting, and you had said you were gonna do that, and maybe you'd want to do it.
So, second that again?
Yeah, I'll second that again.
Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye?
Aye.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next up on the agenda is an update on Person's Park, Park and Rec. Anyone here?
They're expected.
Anyone outside?
Yeah, thanks for letting me close like that.
See you, Don.
Thank you, Mike.
Take care, Mike. Thanks.
Well, just one thing. Do you want to go out of order?
Yeah, we'll go out of order. Well, but is Margie here?
Margie was going to be coming a little late, so I told her we would go on with the town administrator report and Selectmen's
Yeah, we're
business.
anticipating.
She should be here by 8.
Yeah.
All right, if you want to, Mr. Lowe, would you like to give your report?
Sure. As I discussed at a previous Selectmen's meeting, I said that I felt that we should, because the state is clearly heading in the direction of regional dispatch. And sooner or later, it's going to be a fait accompli. So liking the idea of being sort of the masters of our own fate, I thought it was important to look at how we could pursue some sort of a study for this, which is certainly different than actually doing it. And having looked at it, having discussed this with the 911 folks, they have a new round of grant applications coming out actually today or tomorrow, with a deadline, I believe, of March 4th. And my concept is this. My concept is that we should be evaluating, I'm sorry, deadline of April 1st, my mistake. We should be evaluating whether or not it makes sense for us as a dispatch center to take on the responsibilities of an area town or merge with another town, with us being the host center. What made the most sense to me in consulting with Chief Alfano, he agreed, given what's available, well, the level of interest in the area right now, is to have a discussion with Berlin about that. So we had coffee with the Berlin Chief of Police, and he thought it was a very good idea to evaluate. He felt that, as we do, that regionalization is a train that's coming, and we should be prepared for it. Because I think there'll be consequences at some point if you're not part of a regional dispatch center. So Chief Galvin from Berlin said he had already had some offline conversations with his Board of Selectmen, but actually at last week's Board of Selectmen meeting discussed it with them. They agreed unanimously that we should be looking at an implementation study grant to to see if we can consolidate those operations. I actually already have the letter of attestation from that Board of Selectmen. That being said, I'm a big believer in evaluating all of the options. We can say that we explored all possible options or all logical options. The other logical option, and I'm not saying this is something that should be done, is to also do an implementation study as the pros and cons of merging with the Devens Regional Dispatch Center and us being, if for lack of a better term, acquired by them versus us acquiring someone. I think it's only logical that if we're going to look in one direction, we should look at the other. So that being said, in an email exchange with the experts at 911 at the 911 grant operation, I didn't even know if that was possible. If you had to pick a direction and then apply for an implementation grant. And the answer was, yes, you can. And literally what was said was, yes, you can be awarded for studying two separate avenues. The town of Adams did this with Berkshire County and North Adams. Apply under one grant application and explain your two proposals for study. Please ensure you obtain letters of attestation. I would need it from the head of the Devens operation as well as the town of Berlin. So, and I have not approached Devens recently about this. Back when they first started looking at different towns that may be interested, I had a meeting up there probably about 2 years ago, and just to get an understanding of what it was all about. And at the time, the Devens operation certainly was interested in having a discussion with Bolton, but I never took it anywhere. So now that I think it's time, it really is time for a study, that would be my recommendation, that we apply for an implementation study grant and hire the consultant through the grant who will look in both directions. They'll come back, give us their findings, what the pros and cons are. I mean, some of the pros and cons are already obvious, but some of them may not be so obvious. And then we can have a data-driven discussion about which, if either direction, makes sense. But I think the first thing to do is to, I mean, the money is there to do exactly what we're talking about as far as performing these studies, so I think we should take advantage of it.
I agree 100%, because you're absolutely right. At some point, we're going to get forced into a decision that we may not like, so at least at this point, we have options to pick something that might be more palatable.
Acton and Boxborough have just gone regional, and you ought to check with them because it's fairly new, but see how it's working out. I know for driving the senior van over there, it's a tough way to do it because the regional office doesn't know how long it takes to get to people or how long each thing's going to be, and the local people know better. So, but
I mean, there are some things that obviously come over time. You know, any regional operation day one is not going to be as efficient as a regional operation in year 3. So obviously there's a ramp up. I've already had some discussion with some of the town administrators whose towns are using Devens. And you hear good things, you hear not so good things. And that's all part of what we need to evaluate.
It's not so much, we're going to be forced into doing this at some point
no,
down
but
the road.
I'm just saying, if you check with them, they could give you a heads up on what they've gone through.
Right.
No, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. No, I think it's a good idea. I think you should definitely investigate this.
So,
Dan, should we vote?
yes, please.
I move that we direct the town administrator to move forward seeking a grant for an implementation or feasibility implementation study of regionalized dispatch, both with the town of Berlin and also with the Devens facility.
Second.
Any discussion from the audience? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Thank you. I have no Minuteman update tonight.
What are you going to do? You're lost.
I can do a few shout-outs. Unless the board has any questions for me, that's all I have for this evening.
Wow. Well, Margie's here, so we'll back up in the agenda and come on down.
Your timing is perfect.
How are you, Margie?
Good, how are you? Good. Thanks for pushing me back. I'm juggling multiple meetings tonight, so. Hot off the press. Basically, I just took the same sheet that I had given you last year and added to it. The serial numbers have changed slightly. Sorry.
No, you're sure? Okay.
Yes. I'm sorry. So I'll give you afterwards if you want.
You can get it this weekend.
Yes. So basically, you know, we're at the same place. Ambulance is holding up pretty well. It's a good rig, but it's nearing. We tend to say that the lifespan of an ambulance is 5 to 7 years. We're approaching that. The build time of an ambulance, once it goes out to contract, once the contract's awarded, is 180 days at least. So 6 months out. So I feel like it's time to start that process. We've been preliminarily looking at what we want, meeting with vendors to get the, you know, a realistic price. As I talked to you about last year, I am interested in researching the notion of keeping this current ambulance and adding on the new ambulance. As of right now, we have, if this ambulance goes out for service, gets broken, we have no backup. So we have to rely on mutual aid. We have been relatively lucky in the past. We've been able to borrow ambulances from surrounding towns, but you know, we're not always able to do that. So
Clinton and Boylston have been generous with spare ambulance when they can lend it to us.
Yeah, but that's not always. My biggest concern is not having an ambulance in town. Obviously, having a second ambulance has a lot of other benefits. We could, you know, run concurrent calls if we have enough staff, which oftentimes we do. We could also, when we do, you know, town events, we can increase our coverage. Be a little bit safer. We can, right now, we're not part of any task force, you know, within our area, only because if our ambulance leaves, we have nothing. We could be part of a task force. So there are definitely benefits to having 2 ambulances in town.
Do you know yet how much of the, say this grammatically correct, what you have for ambulance receipts that you can apply towards the
so, as of right now, there was almost $225,000 in receipt reserve. The actual number. The actual number is.
But advisory wants to hold back some of that, right? So, did you have a figure, Terry?
No, Randy was, I don't know if he's talked to you this week, but he was going to do some calculations and come up with something. So next week when you come, we should have.
Sounds like we're.
But not in just general discussion, not as much as last year, and we had reduced it from the year before. So I don't think we're looking to.
Sounds as though we're fairly close. So if you've got an estimated amount of $195,000 for the acquisition.
Yeah, and that's actually.
Is that low?
That's low because that's from last. Yeah, because that's from last year.
Because we have been talking about 240 or so before.
Yeah, because that's last year's number. So.
All right, so you have 225K now, and.
So we
whenever the trigger is pulled, it will take about 6 months to get the ambulance.
Correct.
So let's say you were ready to order the thing tomorrow. In a 6-month window, what's the order of magnitude of receipts that come in?
Well, this is what we've done. I actually pulled the last 3. So it varies, but the lowest you can see in the credits is almost $5,000. Right. So this is this year. I actually have the last 3 years because the numbers jump wildly. You can't really.
Right.
But I mean, it could be as high as $15,000 per month.
So conservatively, we could probably say $7,000 a month.
Right. So
So in that six-month period, about 35 grand
Yeah.
would be coming in. And how much does it cost? What's the, well, if you're looking at wanting to hold on to the second ambulance right now, there's no space, there's no garage space yet, but
Right.
for, notwithstanding that, what's the cost to operate that vehicle now in terms of gas and insurance?
I don't know the insurance part. The gas would be, I think, would probably be $1,000, $1,500. We would be running it as a secondary unit, so,
Right.
you know, it wouldn't be astronomical, I don't think.
I think the insurance and, you know, whatever.
Yeah,
potential-
I would have to keep it certified, which is $300 a year. So it would really just be gas,
Regular maintenance.
regular maintenance, and so I'm thinking it's it's probably, $3,000, $4,000 in the operational budget.
And we can check.
And that includes insurance?
No, I don't.
Just
yeah,
operational.
No, we have to check on the insurance.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know about that. And I have talked to Brownie, and he's come over and we've looked at the old fire station. And if we reconfigure the antennas on the current ambulance, if we get the hockey puck style instead of the long whip style that we have, we could conceivably fit it in the old fire station. We'd have to do some cleanup of the old fire station. I'd probably have to rent a storage unit to put, there's a lot of snow equipment in there. But we think that we can get keeping the fire truck that's in there, we believe that we can get both of the vehicles in there.
You're talking about the oldest fire station?
The oldest fire station, yes.
Okay. Okay.
That was encouraging, and the antennas is pretty small money. So all the paperwork that I put through for 2015, I'm saying $250,000, and that covers everything.
So I mean, so you have just about enough, whether we'd have to kick in something or not. Obviously, this would be something that would be put on the warrant in May, so you have February through May in terms of receipts, and then you have the 6 months.
Yeah.
So you almost have, a full year of receipts coming in, to add to the coffers to deal with this, and then whatever you want them to hold back potentially. Dave?
It's a little more complicated than that because historically, let's say the ambulance receipts reserve fund gets $200,000 a year. We've taken $150,000 of that and used it for the operating budget, and then we've saved $50,000 a year with the idea that after 5 years we'll have $250,000 for a new ambulance. Those numbers are very approximate, but that's the idea. So it may be that of the ambulance receipts reserves money coming into the fund, 80% of it may be earmarked for the operating budget and only 20% is earmarked for actually buying an ambulance. I saw something Randy had done that indicated we were going to be about 41,000 short, and it never got this far, but there was sort of an implication. I thought that we might be using some of the free cash to fund that last $41,000 that wasn't in the fund. So, all of this is still up in the air, but I just wanted to make the point that all of the money flowing into the ambulance receipts reserve fund between now and the purchase time may not be available for the purchase.
That's right, Dave's exactly right. That's the way we were
So then the alternative would be we borrow the rest.
Well, or use free cash, or wait a year.
Well, so waiting a year gets a little dicey, not only because, again, this ambulance goes out of service, we have nothing, but every year the cost of the ambulance is going to increase by 3%. That's a given. This year we're already going to have to purchase an ambulance that more likely than not is going to have the DEF. So that's going to add to my operational budget because the environmental standards have changed. So now I have to we just have to take that. If we had bought it last year, we wouldn't have had to worry about that, but we're gonna have to. That's not a big deal.
I'm an IT person, DEF.
Diesel emission fuel or something. It's basically, it's an emission standard. So on top of putting gas into the truck, we have to put this DEF fluid in.
Oh, okay.
So operational budget now is going to be increased because I have to purchase this DEF fluid.
Okay.
There's only one vendor right now that purchased credits. I don't understand how this all works, that we could potentially get away from not having to do that. But the theory is that their credits are nearing the end.
Right,
So the second piece is that it's widely expected that eventually Massachusetts is going to accept the NFPA standards, which is the National Fire Protection Agency standards. It's safety standards right now are governed by the state, but this is a more rigid safety standards, and that's expected to add $6,000 to the cost of the rig. So in addition to probably $1,200 more, we could potentially be looking at $6,000 more, just if they adopt that. They actually thought they were going to adopt it this year, so we're lucky they haven't. But
yeah, just a question, I mean, how many towns have more than one ambulance?
Around us.
Yeah, I mean, is that the norm, or is that still the minority?
It's probably in the, directly around us, it's in the minority. You know, Clinton has 3, but they have a significantly higher call volume.
Right.
Boylston is actually pretty akin to us, call volume wise, and they have 2, and they love it. They don't have to worry about, even just routine maintenance, sending it out. But like Lancaster and Stowe, Harvard, they all have 1 ambulance. So that also gets to be tricky, because if we're down an ambulance, we have excellent mutual aid agreements, and the towns around us are more than happy to come over, but we don't want to be depleting their town as well. So.
Yeah. So in reality, I mean, the earliest that you'd be able to get this truck would be the end of this year.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, in theory, we could have the bid specs ready for whenever the town meeting is, and be able to pull the trigger then. We'd have to scramble to have that done, so I'm okay with taking our time.
Yeah.
I feel uncomfortable pushing it out a year, but I'm okay with taking our time within the year.
John, have any other questions?
No.
Well, thank you, Marty.
Thanks, Marty.
Do you want to stay for the selectmen vote on the acceptance of the gift?
Oh, sure.
We could do that next. Park and Rec isn't here yet.
Yeah, I'll have to check with them.
We'll just keep going and then.
Oh, yeah, no, I mean,
If you found time.
I was scheduling them for advisory and selectmen, so it may have just gotten
Okay.
mixed up or whatever, so.
All right, so we'll go on to Board of Selectmen business, and we'll go slightly out of order. One of the agenda items is to vote to accept a gift of $5,000 to the Bolton Ambulance Fund.
I don't think we have anything in the packet for that, do we? We've already received a check and a very nice card from Jeff, is it? It is Jeff. Jeff Gould, who wanted to show his appreciation for the response that they received. The family received to an unfortunate incident that took place at their home, and wanted to donate $5,000 specifically to the Bolton Ambulance Fund in appreciation. And as with any gift, the Board of Selectmen have to vote to accept the gift. And we would earmark it. It would not go into the general fund per se. It would be earmarked specifically for the Bolton Ambulance Fund.
That's very nice.
Yeah, no, it's exceedingly generous. I move that we accept the $5,000 gift to the Bolton Ambulance Fund.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay. And then we'll go to the first one, which is Thanks. Recommendation to dissolve the Historic District Study Committee.
We have the recommendation from our town clerk, Pam Powell, that it be officially dissolved. They performed their charter. The work was submitted to the annual town meeting on May 7th, 2012.
When was it? I thought the article was withdrawn.
It was withdrawn, but it was already on the warrant, so technically it was submitted to town meeting. It was never voted on at town meeting.
Yeah, no, I mean, they did absolutely all the work they were destined to do.
Yes,
But,
they
yeah.
They absolutely did.
No.
Okay. So this is a housekeeping matter as much as anything.
Okay. So I'll make a motion.
I move that we dissolve the Historic District Study Committee that was formed in 2011.
Second?
Okay.
All those, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. And next is vote and execute the memorandum of agreement for call firefighters.
The memorandum of agreement, which has been reviewed by the town administrator and the union representation, and it includes exactly the elements that have been discussed and approved previously by the Board of Selectmen. It's also been reviewed by Labor Council. It has been duly signed by the union, and so I would just ask that the Selectmen vote to sign the memorandum of agreement and sign the memorandum of agreement, and then we will proceed to contract language.
I move that we approve and execute the memorandum of agreement number 1 between the town of Bolton and Teamsters Union Local 170 Call Firefighters Unit for the period July 1, 2013 through June 30th, 2016.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Yes.
Just a question, does this become a public record as soon as it's voted by these folks? It does.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 I'm delighted to have one done before the term actually. And we did have on the agenda for this evening, vote and execute contract for the police union. There are no issues with it. The union has agreed with all the contract language. They just have not returned a signed contract to me yet, so presumably it'll be on the next agenda.
Okay. And the last item is review of minutes.
Yep, you have regular session minutes of November 14th and December 5th, and executive session of December 5th.
Okay. I move that we approve the minutes of November 14th and December 5th, 2013, and the executive session minutes of December 5th, 2013.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Oh, there it is. We missed.
Was there one?
Linda, there was no tab.
Oh,
A third?
we're helpless without a tab, a sign here tab.
Okay, there you go. I'll trade you. Look on some. All right. Any further business, gentlemen? Are we all set?
No, nothing
Okay.
further?
And I believe we do not need an
We
executive
do not need
session.
an executive session this evening.
All right. Any other business from the audience?
No, I move we adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye.